Hey everyone, this is Liz Brassoff from Thrust Flight. I'm one of the chief flight instructors here, and I'm also a first officer at a regional airline. Today we're going to talk about dangerous habits to avoid at non-towered airports. So the first one I want to talk about is your traffic pattern entry. At a non-towered airport, you are controlling yourself with the other traffic. You're making sure that you're avoiding each other and sequencing enough space in between each other so that you can each accomplish what you need, takeoffs, landings, etc. So a non-standard entry at a non-towered airport can be a really big safety risk. Super dangerous, don't do it. There's published guidance from the FAA on how to enter a traffic pattern at a non-towered airport. There's the 45 degree to the downwind leg, there's the teardrop if you're coming from the wrong side of the field, and there's the direct entry into the downwind, where again, I'm coming from the wrong side of the field, I need to cross the airport to get on the appropriate downwind, and I can turn directly into that downwind. Doing anything beyond that means other pilots don't know where to look for you. If they missed your initial radio call telling them where to look or where to expect you, or perhaps they're flying without a radio since it's not required at a non-towered airport, it means we could have a possible collision risk here, and we want to completely avoid that if possible. So putting yourself in predictable places is going to help avoid that. So fly a standard entry, please, into non-towered airports. Along with that is entering the traffic pattern while descending. That goes right in line with flying a standard entry. We're supposed to enter the traffic pattern at the appropriate height depending on which entry we're doing. If it's the 45 degree to the downwind, if it's crossing the field and turning directly into the downwind, both of those need to occur at traffic pattern altitude. If we're descending as we make those turns, we're opening ourselves up to a lot of blind spots and putting ourselves again at a higher collision risk. The teardrop entry has a really specific altitude as well, right? And again, we don't want to make a descending entry into these danger zones where other aircraft are operating. The traffic pattern is one of the most congested places you'll fly, so we really want to make sure that you're flying at the same altitude and levels as the other pilots so as to avoid surprising each other or, again, opening ourselves up to blind spots that put us in an increased collision risk area. The next dangerous habit I want to talk about at non-towered airports is getting in a hurry. This could probably go for any airport you operate at, but I'm going to give you a few situations where it can be particularly dangerous at a non-towered airport. So picture you're on the ground waiting to take off and someone else has just landed. They haven't announced on the radio that they're clear of the runway. You go ahead and pull onto the runway and start applying power for your takeoff run. We could be in a pretty tight spot there if that aircraft hasn't actually progressed down the runway. Maybe they've got a flat tire and they're stuck on the runway and now you're barreling at them at full throttle. Or perhaps they were going to back taxi on the runway. There's just a lot of risk we put ourselves at there because we were in a hurry. We couldn't wait, 30 more seconds for this person to announce their intentions or announce they're clear of the runway before we started progressing down it. Another place this could be really dangerous is we're flying in the traffic pattern, maybe we're on downwind, there's another aircraft on final, and we're in a hurry. We need to get down on the ground, we've got something to be to, we're already late, or we need to get in a couple more landings before our student's lesson is finished, or some other item that's making us feel pressured for time. So we decide to turn base in front of this aircraft that's on final because we were in a hurry, because we needed to get down and they could always slow down. When we put our trust in this aircraft has seen us or will be able to manage their speed to follow behind us, it puts us in an increased risk zone. That aircraft might not have the ability to fly any slower than it currently is, or maybe they're not going to be able to visually see you. And now we've got two aircraft on final, neither one can see the other, and they're operating in pretty close proximity, a position none of us want to be in. There's lots of accident case studies we could go into there, but getting in a hurry overall can lead to trouble because there's nobody else looking out for you. There's no air traffic controller watching radar or looking out the window to help you avoid some of these dangers, so it's all on you. Taking your time, giving each other room and space is going to be the best way to avoid some of those danger spots. Another dangerous habit to avoid when operating at non-towered airports is non-standard radio calls. I'm going to give you 3 specific examples here where I've seen increased risk in the operations in my own flight training, either with students or in my own personal flying. The first one is not specifying if you're on the right or left downwind. You just say, I'm on downwind for 18 or I'm on downwind for 36. That doesn't help the other pilots know where to look for you. There's a published standard traffic pattern for this airport, right? Maybe you're in it, maybe you're not. Maybe they don't know if it's right traffic or left traffic that's standard for this airport. So having you include that in your radio calls can really help increase safety in your operations at non-towered airports. I'm on right downwind for runway 18. I'm on right base for runway 18, right? All of that can really just help everyone understand where each other is to avoid possible collision risks. Okay, the next one is calling the runway the active. When you say you're clear of the active, or I'm taking the active runway for takeoff, that's not gonna help the other pilots know where you are. Perhaps they think the active runway is the one that's most commonly used on calm wind days because the wind is 5 knots or less. And you're using the one the wind actually favors, even though it's a light wind. Or maybe they think the active runway is the one that's going the same direction as the airport they left because they only took off 30, 40 miles away from this airport or 20 minutes ago, right? So saying the active is really unhelpful when specifying which runway you're using at a non-towered airport. Use the actual runway numbers. It's gonna help increase everybody's awareness of where the traffic is at this specific airport at that time. And the last one I want to share with you is using IFR waypoint names in your radio calls. It's very common to practice instrument approaches at non-towered airports, whether you're in flight training or maybe you've got a safety pilot with you and you're just brushing up your skills, or maybe you're the VFR pilot and somebody else is calling these practice instrument approaches into land at your non-towered airport. What's not helpful is using the IFR fixed names on your radio calls. So if you call and say, I'm at Jarrett inbound for runway 18, or maybe you just say, we're at Jarrett, and you don't say your intentions after that, super unhelpful, right? There's gonna be pilots in the traffic pattern that don't know where Jarrett is or whatever the fixed name is at your airport. There's gonna be pilots who don't even know what an ILS is if you said we're inbound on the ILS for runway 18. So you wanna make sure that you're using the standard radio phraseology for the type of operations that day. Typically, you're practicing those approaches on clear VFR days. So saying things like I'm on a 10-mile final or I'm on a 5-mile final would really help the other VFR traffic be able to picture where you're at and be able to space themselves according to you. Same even for IFR rated pilots. I fly into airports that I haven't been to before, VFR. I don't know all the IFR fixed names, and somebody calls in and says that they're crossing over one. It doesn't really help me know your position. I might now have to give you a radio call and clarify, oh, is that the final approach fix? Is that some other point? Where can I expect you, right? And now we can space each other out. If we had just included the mileage on where we were from the airport, which is much more standard VFR language to use on the radio, then we'd all be in a better position. We'd all have better situational awareness of what's actually occurring. Well, that about wraps up today's video on dangerous habits to avoid at non-towered airports. I hope it helps in your non-towered flying, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos.